all you guys remember buying baseball cards when you were younger, and if you were like me, you ended up taking some of those baseball cards, putting in your bicycle tires, putting in spokes, and then you go back about 15, 20 years and find out those cards that you put in those spokes are worth a lot of money, and you could kick yourself. Luckily, I did in later years end up getting some of my cards, taking care of some of it. What we're going to talk about tonight is sports memorabilia, among other things. And one of the big collectors around here is Mr. Wes Potter, and we've got him on the show tonight. Wes Potter, welcome to the show. Appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you having me, Steve. Thank you, man.
Now, Wes is a longtime collector and also a wrestling referee. Now, we'll talk about that. We'll get that out of the way right quick. Wes, you want to talk about your referee name? You've got a different name when you referee.
I do, man. It's kind of like a alias, so to speak. So when I referee, I go by the name Ron Mills, and that's RONMILS. That's one L. And so, if you kind of look at it on the surface, you may not catch it at first glance, but if you think Ron Mills and kind of dig into North Carolina history a little bit, or at least North Carolina pop culture history, you'll come up with a name that I'm sure most of us here in the state know. If you're a fan of country music and you know some of the great country singers that have come out of North Carolina, you recognize the name Ronnie Millsap. And yeah, Ronnie's from Robbinsville, North Carolina, out in the western part of the state in the mountains. And anyway, long story short, I'm a huge Ronnie Millsap fan. And right when I started refereeing, the first couple of matches I did, I noticed that fans got really, really upset when I would miss a call, or if I made the wrong call, or I did something they didn't like. They were quick to try to call me by name, and some of them would even try to track me down in the parking lot when I'm leaving the shows. And so I thought, well, using my real name is probably not a good idea. So we might need a performing name. And there was a girl I was dating at the time, and we were kicking around some ideas. And she said, well, hey, you like Ronnie Millsap, so why don't you just go by Ron Mills? And I thought, you know what, it's simple enough, and I like Ronnie Millsap, let's do it. And so it just stuck, and it's worked for me ever since.
Yeah, I never would have guessed that going from that. But now, after you told me that story, I think it was a few months ago, it all made sense. So, now, first of all, when did you start with, collecting? I know you probably, I don't know if you were like me, you started out with baseball cards, because that was a big thing back in, I can remember going to the grocery store, to the little dime store back when I was a kid with my mom, and getting wasn't anything just to get a pack of baseball cards. Is that how you started out?
Absolutely. So kind of everything, I guess, with not just collecting, but just my overall love for sports and what evolved into my love for wrestling, all came from baseball cards.
Right.
When I was probably, 8, 9 years old, my dad gave me my very first baseball card. It was a 1983 Flair, Pete Rose. And by that point, Pete was managing and playing for the Philadelphia Phillies. So he'd already left Cincinnati, and he was definitely at the end of his career. And the card was in horrible shape. There was a thumbtack hole right at the top center. But my dad spoke so highly of Pete Rose, and he just kind of created him into this kind of larger-than-life figure. And I thought, wow, here's a baseball card of this Pete Rose guy. This is awesome. And so, anyway, from that one card, it went into, probably much to my parents, dismay. Probably hundreds of thousands of baseball cards and packs and boxes. And, like I say, that kind of pushed my love for sports and eventually into wrestling. But, yeah, it definitely all started with baseball cards.
Yeah, I can remember one of the first cards, and I think when it really hit me, when the craze hit me, I would get 1 or 2 packs here and there back in, I think it was like 83. There was where I come from is and I think you've been through here when you went to the race show. You know how small Lasker is. Well, we had, we had one store, and he had one box up there, and I think I ended up buying every pack out of that box. It was 83 Topps baseball. So, and, can remember one day finding $5 on the street out there. Somebody had dropped, and nobody was around. So I took that, and guess what? All $5 went to packs of baseball cards. But one of the first ones that stuck out in my head, and this was later on, was a guy. I was a Carolina fan, B.J. Surhoff, him and Kirby Puckett. That was 2 of them that really stuck out. And I got into the craze, and just like you, I probably drove my parents crazy with all the cards I bought. Upper Deck come along, and one of the things we talked about a few months ago was one of the shops that you went to up there where you're from that I went to, and my cousin really frequented, the Batter's Box in Greenville. Had no idea that was still open. That was open when I was like 18. I was actually younger than probably about 16 or 17. And what a place that was.
Yeah, man. It's they're still in business. Probably about 5 miles from where I live now. And it's such a throwback with what you're talking about, and it doesn't sound like it's all that long ago, but it kind of feels that way to a degree because there's no baseball card shops anymore.
No.
And that time period you're talking about, like when I was probably 17, 16 years old, I remember, I could take a trip to Raleigh with my parents, and there would be a couple of baseball card shops, or you could take a trip to Norfolk, Virginia, go into the phone book, and there'd be a couple baseball card shops. But that's not the case anymore. And, really around the eastern North Carolina area, the main, hub, so to speak, was the Batter's Box for us here in Greenville. And with what you're talking about, I've spent a lot of time. The owner's name was Mr. Wendell Grant.
Right.
And like I say, it's about 5 miles away. But probably what you're talking about, that particular, location where the Batter's Box was at that time, really felt like a baseball card shop because it was over on Trade Street in Greenville, and it was kind of wedged in this kind of forgotten shopping center that, I think it was sandwiched between like a Napa auto parts store and a like a Rainbow vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, man. And then there was this baseball card shop wedged right in between. When you walked in, it was just like a straight, kind of a single-wide mobile home field, and you just walked straight from the front to the back, and there was every card you could imagine, man. You just had such great stuff in there. I have so many great memories as a kid in that store.
I can remember walking in there the first time. My cousin was going to ECU at the time, and we went up there, and I walking in there the first time, and I was like, oh, my gosh. If my memory serves me right, didn't he have a Michael Jordan jersey hanging in there?
Absolutely, and you know what? What's so funny about that? That's so funny you mentioned that because it's so memorable. He did. He had a Red Bulls jersey, 23. He had it shadow boxed, and it was autographed by Jordan. And Jordan didn't sign it on the 2 or the 3. He signed it above the number, kind of right around the neck or shoulder area.
Right.
He signed it in black Sharpie, and I remember very clearly. There was a story that broke around here, and this was probably, I don't know, man, we're going to say somewhere like 93 to 96, somewhere in that range probably. The Batter's Box got broken into. There was a burglary there. And anyway, the criminals, I guess, didn't understand baseball cards or what was valuable, and they left the jersey. When they took a few things, and they didn't even get the most valuable cards he had. They just got a few random cards, and they left the jersey because he had just gotten it. And I went in his shop sometime probably within the last year, and he still has that jersey hanging in the baseball card shop, and it's still there. So that's something I think we all remember if you went in there.
Oh yeah, anybody in the state of North Carolina went in there would definitely recognize. Oh well, anybody around would recognize that Jordan jersey. I mean, that would stick out really to you. I always looked at that when I went in there, and I really remember that. But like you said, he had every card in there, and he was, gosh, what a place that was. And you talk about no card shops anymore. Don't you think in the early 90s or mid 90s it was kind of overkill where there was companies making cards left and right, and it was just so much that they kind of priced themselves right out of the business?
Oh, absolutely, man. I remember, you mentioned earlier Upper Deck.
Right.
And I don't mean to throw Upper Deck under the bus because they produced a lot of great products that probably we all chased, but they really changed the game.
They did.
For collectors and sellers and everybody. They really changed the game, and man, I remember when they first started doing the kind of game-used relic cards.
Yeah, I remember.
They were the first guys to do that, and I remember there was controversy because they bought a Babe Ruth bat from Sotheby's auction house, and they were going to cut it up into nickel-sized pieces and put it on, 2,500 baseball cards and put it in the pack. And when those cards started getting pulled, those were $3,000 and $4,000 baseball cards. I mean, people were just going wild over these relic cards. And just the other night, I was looking on eBay, and I was looking up Babe Ruth bat relic game-used cards.
Mm-hmm.
And now the market is so saturated, and like you said, they price themselves out of the market. You can buy one of those Babe Ruth bat cards now for about $80.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous.
It
You've gone, $3,000 to $80 in a matter of, 15 years.
Yeah, it's
crazy.
And just the name Babe Ruth attached to it right there, a piece of history like that's just, and you can get it for $80 now.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. It really is. Now, outside of baseball cards, you're into baseball cards, but what got you to carry it to the next level, like with collectibles? I mean, what was your first big purchase that wasn't baseball cards, that was a collectible?
As far as just keeping it in the realm of sports, like I said, we'll start kind of with the foundation being the '83 Fleer Pete Rose.
Right.
From there, I kind of migrated into the memorabilia, and I got away from the cards, and I went into other sports memorabilia. I started collecting NASCAR, and
right.
I've got autographed footballs from Gail Sayers.
Wow.
John Elway. You mentioned Carolina guy earlier with DJ Surhoff. I've got a Jerry Stackhouse autographed jersey and a basketball. And then I've got a Dean Smith autographed basketball.
Wow.
So I really jumped, out, through all sports. The first kind of big ticket purchase for me was I actually talked my mom into buying me a autographed Mickey Mantle baseball. And this was probably 6 to 8 months before he died.
Oh, wow.
He paid $80 for it. Which, don't get me wrong, that was a lot of money at the time, and somehow I remember she paid $80 for it. That was a crazy number, but anyway, that was kind of the first big sports item I got, and then eventually I went from NASCAR, baseball, basketball into wrestling, and it just kind of grew from there.
Now I've been talking it up when I've been talking about this interview, and I wouldn't give away a lot of what you have, what I've seen, but I did give away one thing. The robe Flair wore Starcade 83 that you have. That right there, when I heard that you had that, I was like, wow. How, now I have to hear, I haven't heard this story, but I have to hear, how did you come about getting that?
So that's a crazy story, and it actually goes, it segues off of what we were just talking about with baseball cards and everything,
Right.
and all that memorabilia. So I collected all this sports stuff, and right around high school, I started to. I used to play tennis in high school, and I tore my meniscus in my knee, and I had to have surgery, and I was out for about a couple of weeks. So during that period, when I was home, my mom rented a lot of old wrestling videos from Blockbuster.
Right.
And, you know, you used to rent all the pay-per-views or SummerSlam. They didn't call them pay-per-views then. The big shows.
Yeah.
At Blockbuster. So I watched them. I fell in love with a guy named Ric Flair. And I kind of started to think, well, you know, it's really cool that I like this sports stuff. And it's really cool that I like this Ric Flair guy. I wish we could somehow start to collect memorabilia for these wrestling folks, you know? And, you know, I kind of had that thought in the back of my head, but I didn't really know how to execute it. Anyway, I didn't want collectibles like, you know, we can go to Walmart or Target and we can buy the WWE action figures on the shelf, but
right.
Anybody can do. I'm talking about the stuff like the Babe Ruth bat, you know, that not everybody has. There's only a certain number of them.
You're talking about something unique. You want something unique.
Right, yeah, that not everybody's got. You know, you can say, hey, I'm one of the few people that's got one of these things. And anyway, it's really funny that we were talking about baseball cards because I was probably, by this point, I'm about 17 years old, and I've actually bought and sold a few cards during middle school and high school, so I've been able to kind of make some money and save a little bit of money. And I have, I think probably around $1,200 saved up, which isn't a lot of money. So for a 16-year-old kid,
that's a lot of money for that age.
You're a millionaire, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there with this money, and it's probably 1998, and there's this new thing that comes about, and it's a website on the internet, which is new, and it's called eBay. And it's like an online yard sale where people just sell their stuff. So anyway, some of the stuff they sold was baseball cards. So anyway, one night I said, I'm going to take my $1,200 that I've saved up, and I'm going to buy a 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle. Okay? And that, you know, that's like the holy grail of baseball cards.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's an auction going on, and it's for a 52 Topps Mantle. It wasn't in great condition. It's probably a PSA 1. But anyway, I bid in the auction, and I ended up getting outbid, and so I didn't get the card. And so I was kind of defeated, and I said, oh, shoot. You know, I didn't get my card. I've still got my $1,200. It's burning a hole in my pocket. What else can I buy? Well, somehow I look around, and I come across an auction, and it says Ric Flair, R-I-C-K, they misspelled Rick, Ric Flair wrestling cape, not robe, but cape. And so I click on it, and I'm thinking, well, what is this? And I look, and it's that beautiful Carolina blue, and it's silver, and it has all these sequins and rhinestones. And I just thought, man, this is incredible. I got to have it. So I bid on the auction, and I end up winning the bid. And so I buy it for, you know, whatever the auction price is, which is pretty close to the amount of money I've got at the time, $1,500. And the guy ships it to me. And I messaged him, and we're kind of talking back and forth, and I'm like, hey, how did you get this? Is this real? What is this? Tell me about this. And so here's the real interesting part of the story. The robe was shipped to my house in Winterville, North Carolina, and it came to me from Colorado. Now, how Ric Flair's robe got all the way out in Colorado, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a long way from Charlotte.
But here's the story I was told. So I asked the guy, I said, how'd you get the Ric Flair robe? He tells me, he says, well, you know, some years ago, I was at a charity auction, and Rick had donated this robe to the auction. And I don't know, maybe he had a few drinks, he was feeling right, whatever it was. Just got to buy a Ric Flair robe at a charity auction. So he buys it, he takes it home. It's kind of a novelty. He puts it on, struts around, looks at it in the mirror, puts it in the box, packs it up, puts it in his attic, forgets it's there.
Wow.
Okay? So 15 years go by, and we end up with me bidding on it at the eBay auction. And the guy sells his house, and he's moving. And so when he's moving, he starts cleaning out the attic. He opens up the box. He finds this Ric Flair robe. And he goes, oh, my gosh, I forgot I had this thing. Well, like most people, when you're moving and you're getting rid of stuff, what do you do? Typically, when you want to move and you've got stuff, you don't really want to throw it away, but you want to get rid of it. What do you do when you move it? You have a yard sale, right?
That's right.
So the guy has a yard sale, and he puts all of his junk out there, and in it is a box with Ric Flair's robe sitting on a table, and he puts it for sale. Well, the yard sale comes and goes, and it does not sell. So they're packing up at the end of the day, and they're getting rid of the stuff that didn't sell, and he tells his buddy, throw all this stuff in the back of your truck. We're going to take it to the dump. We're going to throw it away.
Oh, my gosh.
And so they load Ric Flair's robe in the box in the back of the truck. And I'm going to stop right here and just kind of quiz you a minute and ask you, if you were going to a yard sale and you saw Ric Flair's robe, do you have any idea what this guy was asking on the price tag?
I mean, I wouldn't have a clue. I can't imagine what at a yard sale.
Yeah. So the guy's got a yard sale. He tries to sell the robe. It does not sell. The asking price, $15.
Oh my!
$15. But it does not sell, and it ends up in the back of the truck, getting ready to go to the dump. And his buddy says, "Hey, before you throw some of this stuff away, why don't you try this new website called eBay? They let you sell yard sale stuff on the internet, and people can buy it from you." So the guy puts it up at auction. Instead of getting $15 for it, he gets, I think I paid $1,500 for it. He gets $1,500, and which is still a highway robbery.
Yeah.
And so he sells it to me, ships it to me here in North Carolina, and I've owned it ever since 1998.
Yeah, I'm looking. For those of you listening tonight, there's a website, the Virtual Museum of Ric Flair's historic robe, and I'll put the link up on my Facebook page. But wow, 40 pounds. The robe weighs 40 pounds.
Absolutely.
And you have to, like you said, you have to have muscles just to wear it. So can you imagine? Ooh, gosh, that's just a crazy story that he was selling it at a yard sale, trying to get $15 for it, and it didn't sell. Obviously, no wrestling fans were at that yard sale that day. But okay, now that road kind of set in motion a little deal you made with WWE not too long ago. Am I right?
That's right. Stevie, when I first, so I'll kind of give you a little bit more of a background. So when I bought the road, that was my first. That's pretty much how I got into the business of professional wrestling.
Right.
Okay. When I bought that road, because right after I bought it, someone else who was on eBay at the time, wrestling fans will recognize his name, Charles Robinson.
Yeah, Little Nate.
Yeah. Little Nate, exactly. He sent me a message through eBay, and he said, hey, this is Charles Robinson, referee with WWE. And anyway, we struck up a friendship, and we have had to this day. So we've been kind of connected, since 1998. But from there, he introduced me to another, Carolina wrestling legend, George South.
Yes, sir.
And George actually was the first time I ever got in a wrestling ring was with George South. And so I kind of got lucky because I got sort of looped into this great group of talent and kind of historical NC wrestling legends.
Right.
And anyway, so from there I met George. I was in the ring with him, and then ended up, starting my own refereeing gig right out of Greenville, North Carolina. And that's been running now for probably, I've been a referee for almost 18 years, but
wow.
Not at this year's WrestleMania, but the WrestleMania that was in Orlando, I believe it was 33.
That's right.
You mentioned WWE earlier. They've been aware that I've been in possession of the Starcade Robe, and that's a very important match in Flair's career.
Definitely.
They actually reached out to me several months before that WrestleMania in 2017 in Orlando, and they were honoring Ric Flair that weekend. Once a year they do it's sort of a lifetime achievement kind of award where I think the first person they ever recognized was Bruno Sammartino, and he had a bronze life-size statue made, and then Dusty Rhodes got one, and Ultimate Warrior, and Flair was the fourth one. And that particular year, they wanted to do a big celebration of Ric Flair's career, and part of that was WWE Access, which is the event they do all weekend of WrestleMania in the Hall of Fame. They set up a tribute where they had about 15 of his robes on display. And, of course, they actually had 2 robes that I used to have in my personal collection on display, but the centerpiece was my Starcade Robe. So they reached out to me and they said, hey, if we can get you down here to Orlando, can you bring this robe? And, of course, I was honored to be a part of it and had a chance to send the robe down to, actually up to Connecticut, and then they took it down to Orlando and got to hang out all weekend. We stayed at the hotel with all the talent. We were right there in the hub of it. My wife and I flew down and stayed all weekend there at the Marriott. Hung out with the guys, went to the, obviously the Access, the Hall of Fame, the show, all that great stuff. And it was just, it was an awesome weekend and an awesome tribute. You want to talk about memorabilia and wrestling memorabilia now.
Yeah, I'm sure there was plenty of that there.
They have an impressive archive. They really do.
Now, okay, you're talking about getting in a little group with legendary wrestlers from North Carolina. There's a man that just passed away. It's been probably over a year now. I know it's been over a year now. Russian Bear Ivan Koloff. Everybody remembers him, former WWF champion. He beat Bruno. Multiple-time World Tag Team Champions in NWA back in the Crockett days. Held several regional titles. Everybody remembers Ivan after his career kind of died down. I guess he was semi-retired, what you would call it. Did these Walmart tours. He would go. I sat at the Walmart in Hosky, North Carolina, and I bet I talked to him for an hour one night after I got off work. And he talked to me just like I was one of his best friends. But you have a story, and I heard you tell the story, a story about how you met Ivan Koloff. And what it's a great story, guys. I look forward to hearing this story again. But how about sharing that story with us about how you met Mr. Koloff?
He's one of those guys that, for me personally, this was very special in this business for me, for a couple reasons. Because one, he actually lives here in town where I live.
Right.
And I really describe him, and I say this really with all sincerity, and I say it with all affection. And he was known throughout the business as, he was Uncle Ivan.
Yep. With
the angle he did with Nikita and, Cluster Khrushchev and all that. He was kind of Uncle Ivan, but he was really an uncle-like figure. Because it's one of those guys, it's like, you may not talk to him every day, but he's always there in the background.
Yeah.
And if you ever need him, you can reach out to him. And if you don't need him, you might bump into him. But he's just there. And that's the way he was for me. Really before I think I even knew it. Like I said earlier, I was 18 when I bought Ric Flair's robe, and that's right around the same time I met Charles Robinson and George South and all these guys. And I was graduating from high school, and in order to graduate, we had to do a final project to graduate high school. And so, of course, I chose my project to be on professional wrestling. And I wanted to be a professional wrestler. And, you know, real quick, I found out how difficult it is and that I could not do it. My body wasn't made to do it. That's how I ended up refereeing.
Right.
But along that process, I got to meet, several guys, and I got to conduct some interviews, and I got to conduct an interview with Ivan Koloff. Ironically enough, I wanted to interview him, and I knew he lived in the area, but I didn't know how to get up with him. And this is, 2000, so this is before you could just Google or Facebook someone and get their information. Anyway, my father actually ran into Ivan Koloff at Bum's Barbecue Restaurant in Ayden, North Carolina, and that's where I'm from originally, and Ivan used to love to go there and eat. And my dad was eating there one night and ran into Ivan, and he said, "Hey, my son would like to interview you for a project. Could you give him a call?" And so my dad gives him my cell phone number, and a few nights later, I get a call, and it's Ivan Koloff. And I'm an 18-year-old kid, and I'm just like, oh, my gosh, the Russian Bear is calling me. And so we set up a date, and I went. I met him at a Burger King restaurant, and we sat there, and I didn't know what I was doing. I'm an 18-year-old kid doing a school project, but he treated me just like I was a CBS evening news reporter coming in to do a major story. I mean, he showed me the same respect he would have a professional, even though I didn't deserve it. And he sat there and talked to me for probably 2 hours and gave me just page after page of notes. And I brought my recorder, and I recorded everything he said, and still have the transcription of the interview to that day. When we talk, I've still got all that information. But he was always just one of those guys that kind of, for some reason, just took me under his wing, and I don't know why. And it didn't matter where I saw him. If I saw him at Bum's Restaurant in Ayden, or if we were coming back from Virginia and we stopped at Walmart in the Hosky, and there he was at a table.
Yeah.
Or if he was at Kmart in Greenville, wherever it was, he would always just treat you, just phenomenally, and always had such great things and mentorship to offer me personally. He was just very special in my career. And I know you didn't ask this, but it just goes kind of off of the memorabilia thing. Years ago, of course, you mentioned he was a former WWF champion. Of course, Ivan beat Bruno and ended the 7-year run of Bruno being heavyweight champion. And this was just so special to me. When my wife and I were in Orlando, Florida, in April of 17 for the Ric Flair celebration, we were eating breakfast at the Marriott. It may have been Sunday morning, may have been the day of WrestleMania, and we were sitting in there, and I mean, it's like a who's who of wrestling. There's Sting, there's Kevin Nash, there's so many different guys coming and going, and we're eating breakfast, and the table next to us, in walks the one guy. I would overlook Sting, I'd overlook Kevin Nash, Scott Hall. I could overlook all these guys, but this one guy sat down next to me, and I just got so kind of emotional and worked up. My wife goes, "What is wrong with you? Who is that wrestler?" She had no idea who it was. He was an older guy, and I looked at her and I said, "That's Bruno Sammartino."
Wow.
And he sits down next to us for breakfast, and I was like, I really hate to bother him, but I've got to go over there and speak to him. And I walked over. We both walked over, and I introduced myself. I shook his hand. He stood up from his table. He didn't just sit there and shake my hand. He stood up and genuinely was interested in what I had to say. And one of the things I shared with him was, I said, I actually live in Winterville, North Carolina. And I said, you know another person that lives in Winterville? And he kind of looked at me and he turned his head. And I said, he's a very good mutual friend. His name's Ivan Koloff. And you could just tell immediately Bruno was just so affectionate when he spoke about Ivan, and then showed that same respect to me because I told him I'm a referee and I'm from Winterville and I know Ivan and Ivan's doing this for me and just all these things. And that was one of my favorite things from that WrestleMania weekend you talked about earlier.
Right.
Was getting to talk about Ivan with Bruno because those two were just too interchangeable, you know, in their history. And another kind of neat tidbit about Ivan was a friend of mine also collects memorabilia, and he contacted me about 10 years ago, and he said, "I just got a great piece of memorabilia. You're never going to believe what it is." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And he said, "It's Bruno Sammartino. It's Ivan Koloff's boots that he was wearing the night he beat Bruno for the title." And I said, "Oh my gosh, that's awesome!" And Ivan Koloff was so proud of that moment. He had them bronze, like he would have baby shoes bronze.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had the boots bronze. And so my buddy in Florida bought them, and I told him, I said, if you ever want to sell them, please let me know. If you ever want to get rid of them. And probably 5 or 6 years later, he sends me a message, and he says, "Hey, I want to get rid of them. And I'll sell them to you for what I paid for them." And I said, "Wonderful, I want them." And so I had a chance to buy them, and then I reintroduced them to Ivan a few months later. We were at a show in Charlotte. This was right around 2008, and Ivan autographed it. And I still have those boots to this day. So those are the very boots that ended the 7-year run of Bruno Sammartino.
Now,
and they're autographed.
That's right there. You know, that's got to be right there neck and neck with Flair's robe. Flair's robe is one thing. You get boots from Ivan when he beat Bruno, the night he beat Bruno. Yeah, that's something right there. We've talked about the robe, we've talked about the boots, but that's not all you have. You have some other stuff, not just wrestling memorabilia, but you've told me some other things you have that are outside the sports world. What other wrestling memorabilia do you have?
Well, you know, kind of like you say, my memorabilia goes, you know, even beyond sports.
Right.
But you know, as far as wrestling goes, man, I've been so lucky to be able to get different pieces over the years, and I was really looking back on it now, I was kind of ahead of the curve with all this ring-worn memorabilia. I was able to get in on it kind of at the ground level before other people wanted it. And I've got a pair of trunks that were owned and used by Dusty Rhodes. He wore them at SummerSlam.
So they're the polka dot ones.
Yeah, exactly. Dusty's trunks from probably SummerSlam 90-91. He wore against Undertaker. They had red polka dots. They were autographed by Dusty. I actually have Randy Savage's trunks from WrestleMania 3. Oh, wow. Of course, great match that he had with Steamboat.
Yeah.
Those are autographed with the 3 stars. I have a jacket that was worn in the 70s by Bobby the Brain Heenan and autographed by Brain. And I think Brain just passed away either earlier this year or late last year.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Bobby the Brain. I have Harley Race's boots from WrestleMania 3. You know, he wrestled Junkyard
Dog, and whoever lost had to bow down.
That's right. And what's so unique about those boots is it's kind of funny because when I got those boots, I didn't actually buy them myself. I had them bought by a third party, and the reason why, I had done some training out in Missouri with Harley Race right around 2005, 2006, and I had kept in touch with Harley and his wife at the time. Her name was BJ. And they had some floods in the Midwest right around 2007, 2008. And when the floods came through, it destroyed the Professional Wrestling Museum that was located in Iowa. And they had to rebuild. And so in order to rebuild, they had a giant auction where a bunch of the wrestlers donated memorabilia, and people bid on it. And I remember Bret Hart donated some stuff, Jack Briscoe donated some stuff, and Harley Race donated his boots. Because I remember when I went to his training school, he had his boots from WrestleMania 3. And I'd asked him, would he sell them to me? And he said, no, I'll never sell them. And so he was right. He didn't. He donated them for the auction. And the auction was going on Saturday night. I was refereeing in Raleigh, North Carolina. And DJ, his wife, called my cell phone and said, hey, if you want these boots, they're about to go up for auction. And she stayed on the phone and talked to my father because I was actually in the ring refereeing. And my father bid for me as a surrogate. And anyway, long story short, I ended up getting those boots, and I still have them in my collection today.
Wow.
Yeah, tons of wrestling stuff, Steve.
Well, you got just a great collection there. And we've been Facebook messaging back and forth for a while now, talking about doing this interview. Now, there's one thing that you put a picture up there. I think it was your mom and a certain music entertainer. That yeah, and it kind of struck me when I saw the picture because I recognized the guy, and I was like, I wonder if that guy is still around now. Billy Crash Craddock. And the reason I remember Billy Crash Craddock is because when I was like in 2nd or 3rd grade, he did a concert at my school, Northeast Academy over here in Alaska. He did a concert over there, and you know, I whenever I see him up there, and I was like, wow, I haven't seen Billy Crash Craddock in years. But you also have something of his, right?
Yeah, I do. It's kind of like I said earlier, you know, the collection goes beyond wrestling, and I mentioned Ronnie Millsap earlier, so I'm a huge country music fan. And my mother, she actually passed away when I was 22. Mm-hmm. But growing up with her, she was a big Billy Crash Craddock fan. And I've always kind of compared it to when I first started following Ric Flair in pro wrestling. I would go to all the matches and I'd go to all the shows, and I followed the guys from, you know, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania down to Orlando, Florida. And I'd go to all the shows. Well, my mom, for her time period, did the same thing, but instead of following pro wrestling, she followed Billy Crash Craddock. And he's from Greensboro. He's a North Carolina boy. And so anyway, I just grew up listening to his music, and I guess I've just always kind of been a fan because she made me a fan.
Right.
And
I know the feeling.
She has passed away, and one day I was on an auction website. You can see I don't have any money because I spend all my time on auction websites. But I was on an auction website, and they were actually selling country music memorabilia. And there was a wax museum in Nashville, the Country Music Wax Museum, and it had its doors shut. I'm not sure of the time period, probably the mid-90s. They just closed the doors. And so all these wax figures were left in a basement with jackets from Johnny Cash and dresses from Loretta Lynn and rhinestone suits that were custom made by, you know, Nudie Cohen in Nashville from Buck Owens, Porter Wagner, and Billy Crash Craddock and Ronnie Millsap. And all these guys were just sitting in a basement. And so the landlord sold all the outfits to this auction house, and they auctioned them off. And when I saw the auction, it was Billy Crash Craddock's jumpsuit from an album that I recognized because my mother had the album. And when she passed away, I got all of her old records. And I went and pulled the record out, and I looked, and I said, that's the same, you know, jumpsuit that Crash is wearing on the album that, you know, my mom has that they're selling. And anyway, again, this is probably, you know, 2006, 2007, so it's kind of right at the early part of all this stuff. And I bought a stage-worn custom-made suit from Ronnie Millsap, and I got a custom-made suit from Billy Crash Craddock, and I still have both of those in my collection today.
Wow. You know, you may have to open your own museum and start charging admission to that with all this stuff you got, buddy. Cause
I know my wife would love that.
yeah, but you know, how nervous do you get? Like I was going to ask you earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt you because I was just so interested in the story. Like when you sent Flair's robe off, how nervous do you get when you send that stuff to Connecticut? When you sent Flair's robe, that okay, what if something happens here? I know, I'm sure it's insured, but
it's funny. It's funny you say that because it was quite the ordeal to get the robe to WWE and from WWE. So I did not want to ship the robe.
I can imagine.
FedEx, I did not. So somehow along the line, when I was actually talking with, he's an awesome guy. He's the archivist for WWE. He's actually in charge of all the access, displays they do, all the memorabilia. He keeps track of all the sets, all of these artifacts that WWE produces. His name's Ben Brown, and Ben's an awesome guy. We were having a conversation about my kind of nervousness to send the robe, and somehow it evolved into I was Chris Mountain one weekend, and when I was coming back through from the western part of the state to the eastern, my buddy, who I mentioned earlier, Charles Robinson, had offered, he said, if you will take the robe with you on this trip and come back through Charlotte and drop it off at my house, I will take it and hand deliver it to WWE. So I trusted Charles, of course, and that's exactly what I did. I took the robe with me out to the mountains. When I came back through, I stopped in Charlotte. He packed it up. 2 days later, he actually sent me a picture of the robe packed up in his bag, and he flew up to Connecticut and took it to WWE and hand delivered it.
Wow. So, yeah, I was going to ask you that, Eric, because that's not, even if, I'm sure it's insured, but even if something does happen to it, that's one of the kind of thing that you just can't get back, and it's not really something you can put a dollar value on it for, a fan like you are, Ric Flair. That's
right. There's too big of a risk to take.
Exactly. All right. This is going to be my last question for you, and because I've enjoyed every minute of it. I know we're going on 50 minutes right now, so I know you got things you got to do, but the one thing you've seen out there that you'd really want that you haven't had a chance to get, but you really would like to have in your possession, in your collection.
Wow. That makes me think for a minute.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of them, but
Yeah, there's a bunch, but I think I really would have to narrow it down to wrestling. And with that, I don't have anything in my collection. Out of all the guys that I've worked with, most of the guys that I've worked with, I have something from.
Right.
That, I've worked with Harley Race, I got a pair of his boots. I worked with Dusty Rhodes, I got a pair of his trunks. I worked with Ric Flair, I've got, several trunks, boots, and a robe. But the one guy that I really admire, and I've bumped into numerous times over the years that I don't have anything from, and I know it's been available, is Ricky Steamboat.
Yeah.
And someone out of Charlotte over the last 2 or 3 years actually sold a pair of his boots. And I really, really wanted something from Ricky Steamboat in my collection. I've always been really big on the boots for some reason. That's always been kind of my thing. And I didn't get a chance to get them. They were just a little out of my price range, to be honest with you. But, just what an awesome guy. What an incredible talent.
Yeah, that Steamboat, you look at it, Steamboat and Flair, that was the big rivalry. What great matches. The trilogy from the late 80s with Chi-Town Rumble, and then the Clash, and then the Music City Showdown where Flair got the belt back. Of course, Steamboat won the belt from Flair at Chi-Town Rumble, but the 2 out of 3 falls at the Clash was, gosh, that was a great match. And then you look at the match with Savage at WrestleMania. Steamboat's been in some of the greatest matches you've ever seen in wrestling history, and that's not even counting the Flair matches back in the 70s, like the one at the Meadowlands. And you got us. Steamboat is one of the top wrestlers of all time, and just a good guy. I mean, I can't imagine. I have never met him, but everybody I've heard talks about what a good guy he is. I can't imagine him not being.
No, and that's I think another reason people enjoy him so much is that not only was he just amazing in the ring, but he's just a genuinely nice guy, and you can't say that for a lot of people in the wrestling business. But Steamboat is just a genuinely good guy. He really is.
And you look back at like Ivan and Steamboat, and I know people get tired of hearing me saying it, but there's no way Ivan Koloff should not be in the WWE Hall of Fame by now. I know.
Yeah, I don't. It's really unfortunate, and I'm not sure what's going on there. I know that I think Bruno had some sort of career kind of retrospective special done on him, and I don't know if it was a DVD or what became of the project, but Ivan went up and shot interviews and, met with some of the Triple H's and guys like that a couple of years ago. And, I was really hoping that that was going to be the opportunity for him because, what you have to really kind of distill from everything with Ivan's career is that Ivan was successful wherever he went.
Exactly.
That he didn't just make money in the WWF, and he didn't just sell tickets in the WWF. He left the WWF and he went to, the AWA and the IWA. Eddie Einhorn's IWA
right.
Worked here out of Carolina, and he drew there, and then he came to Mid-Atlantic, and he had a great run there, and Georgia, in all these areas, and take all that and put it in a bag and throw it away, okay? Yeah. Get rid of it. You're still looking at the fact that Vince McMahon, they call him Senior, but Vince McMahon, not Vince McMahon that we know today, but Vince's father, Vincent McMahon, okay, chose Ivan Koloff to end Bruno Sammartino's 7-year run.
Yes.
Okay, Bruno sold out Madison Square Garden more than any other single headline attraction in history, and I believe that record still stands today. And Vincent McMahon, whose entire company hinged on the success of that title change, chose Ivan Koloff to broker that title from Bruno to Ivan, Ivan to Pedro, and then I think Pedro to Backlund, Backlund to Sheik, Sheik to Hulk Hogan.
Right.
So had there not been Ivan Koloff as a link in that chain, what we know today is WWE, publicly traded billion-dollar company with a network and hundreds of hours of footage, probably would not exist. And so if that's not worth a Hall of Fame induction, I don't know what is.
I'm right there with you. I mean, I look at some of the guys that are in there that have been put in there, and I'm just shaking my head. And when Ivan, I was fortunate enough to get to talk to Ivan when he came to the first Rage Wrestling show in Lasker, and I helped him carry in some of this stuff and talked to him for a few minutes. And one of the questions I taught, I said, "What do you think the chances are of the Hall of Fame?" And he looked at me and he just laughed and he said, "Well, I can tell you this: that guy out there in New York better put me in there this year, or I'm going to end up going up there and wringing his neck." And he laughed about it, but it had to be important to him in a way. I mean, because being inducted in the Hall of Fame and standing in front of your peers like that, that had to mean something to him, and they missed the ball on a lot of these guys. Unfortunately, before they pass away, we just lost Vader. That's another guy that deserves to be in there. But you missed the ball, and I know you can't put everybody in at the same time or anything like that. But you know, come on, you know, Ivan's been retired for a while. They knew. It's not like they just forgot about it. They knew he had ended Bruno's reign. He should have been in there years ago.
I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I really hope it. I hope it comes to pass at some point. You know, unfortunately, he's not here anymore. But it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You know, with the baseball cards and everything. It's kind of the same thing for Pete Rose. You know, and I don't mean to stir up controversy, but you know, it's like, are we going to wait till these guys pass away, and then at some point we're going to take action? You know, are we going to reward them for their accomplishments while they're alive?
That's right.
And you know, it's one of those things with Ivan, man. He's just he's done so much for so many people, and I know what he's done for me personally. I mean, he was a huge. You know, I don't know if he'd have been involved in my career in the early part when I first started, if I would be where I am today. And, you know, you hear stories from guys like George South, we mentioned his name earlier, you know, and the things that Ivan did to help take care of him and take care of his family. You know, those things shouldn't be overlooked.
No, they shouldn't be. And hopefully sometime in the near future, they'll see the error of their ways and they'll have them in there. But you know, like I said, just to come up to him, a complete stranger in Walmart and Hosky, and talk to him for hours, and he, like you said, he treated you with respect like a CBS reporter. He treated me like he was my best friend, and he answered. You know, he could have just. I sat there for an hour with him, and I was a little Mark talking to him about, oh, what did you do here? What did you do here? And he talked to me and answered every question, and did it with a smile on his face, and shook hands with me when he walked out. When I walked off, and it was great. It was one of the best experiences I've had with somebody like that, and I'll always remember that. But well, Wes, I'm going to let you. We've taken up about an hour of your time tonight, and I've loved every minute of it. I appreciate you doing this. And we'll definitely have to talk some wrestling with you again in the future, because hopefully I hope to see you at maybe the next Rage event. But Guy, I appreciate your time, and I'm sure all these people out there that listen to this, especially the wrestling fans, will love this interview.
Stevie, I appreciate you taking the time, man. I love being up here. I love hearing you, and I definitely enjoyed the conversation from baseball cards to wrestling. I love it.
Well, I would tell you this: if you let it go, I'm real scared. I'm real concerned about the time, about taking up your time. But I could, between wrestling and baseball cards, I could probably talk to you all night about that. So
yeah, I'm with you, brother.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, Wes Potter, and we appreciate it, Mr. Wes, and you have a good night.
All right, you too, Stevie. Thank you, man. Keep doing what you're doing, brother.
All right. Thank you.